Today we're diving deep into the incredible power of your mind. We're going to explore how you can convince your mind to think in a way that works like magic, allowing you to achieve anything you set your sights on. Get ready for a mind-bending journey that will transform the way you approach life. Picture this: Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, the Wright brothers, Joan of Arc. All these remarkable individuals had one thing in common: a powerful vision. They couldn't see it with their eyes, touch it, or even taste it, but it was alive in their minds. Now, can you believe in a future that your senses haven't experienced yet? The latest research in neuroscience says you absolutely can. By consistently thinking about this future reality, you're rewiring your brain to believe it's already happening. Your brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's vividly imagined. So the key here is falling in love with that vision to the point where your body and mind start living in that future moment. It's not just wishful thinking. It's a powerful process backed by the latest findings in epigenetics. Now, let's talk about the frontal lobe, the crowning achievement of the human brain, responsible for 40% of your entire brain. It's the creative center, the CEO, the boss. When you begin to think creatively, asking open-ended questions about your vision, the frontal lobe wakes up. It connects to all parts of your brain, orchestrating a symphony of change. As you contemplate what it would be like to achieve your goals, the frontal lobe starts selecting different networks of neurons stored in your brain. It seamlessly pieces them together, creating new patterns and combinations. You're literally changing your mind by making your brain work differently. Let's add some spice to the mix. Elevated emotions, passion, inspiration, joy. These emotions elevate your thoughts and make your vision more potent. When you combine a clear intention with elevated emotions, you're not just changing mentally, you're changing biologically. Your brain and body shift from living in the past to living in the future. For those of you who are passionate about your vision, your thoughts create an elevated emotion. You open your heart, and that combination is the secret sauce for fundamental and biological change. It's not just theory, it's a proven formula that has transformative effects on your entire being. Let's delve into a crucial aspect of your transformative journey. The shift from your old self to the new empowered you. Picture this: you've had that game-changing moment, emerging from your resting state and vividly imagining your goals. Now it's time to roll up your sleeves and take action. The first step on this path is to grab a pen and paper. Write down in clear detail all the steps you'll take to reach your envisioned future. What choices will you make? What experiences do you want to embrace? And perhaps most importantly, what emotions will accompany your journey? Make it a roadmap for your personal evolution. Now, here comes the stroke of brilliance. Also jot down the choices you've decided not to make, the behaviors you're consciously choosing to avoid, and the experiences you've deemed incompatible with your new self. This meticulous act of distinguishing between the old and new self is where the magic begins. You're becoming an observer of your own program. Think of it as stepping back and watching a movie of your life. You're no longer just the character. You're the director, guiding the storyline towards the version of yourself you aspire to become. It's a profound shift in perspective that sets the stage for transformation. Yes, it's true, this process can be uncomfortable. Why? Because you're essentially breaking free from the familiar patterns that have defined your old self. It's like shedding an old skin to make way for the new. That discomfort you feel is not a roadblock, it's a signal that you're on the right path, navigating toward your new self. Consider it a bit like remodeling a house. The discomfort is akin to the temporary mess and noise during renovations. It's a small price to pay for the creation of a space that better aligns with your vision. Similarly, the discomfort you encounter signifies the restructuring of your internal landscape. Let's switch gears a bit. And talk about learning. Can you change the circuits in your brain just by thinking about it? Well, let me share a fascinating experiment. People who had never played the piano were divided into groups. One group physically practiced, the second had no structure, the third didn't even show up, and the fourth mentally rehearsed the exercises. The results? The group that mentally rehearsed showed the same brain activity as the group that physically practiced. Just by thinking, they grew new circuits in their brains. Every time you learn something new, you're making new connections in the brain. Repetition sustains and maintains those connections. It's the key to developing a long-term relationship with your new skills or behaviors. Let's dive into a fascinating aspect of our journey, those moments when time and space seem to slip away during your mental rehearsals. Imagine getting so wrapped up in your vision that the world around you and even your own body take a back seat. According to the brains and nerves experts, that's when you're stepping into a magical realm known as the quantum field. In this mind-bending process, the star of the show is the prefrontal cortex, a special part of your brain. It's like the conductor of a grand orchestra, orchestrating the symphony of change within you. You're not just thinking positive thoughts. You're doing something much more profound. You're reshaping and rewiring your brain. As you lose yourself in your vision, the prefrontal cortex becomes the hero, working its magic to make your thoughts more real than anything else. It's not a mere daydream, it's a powerful process of repatterning and rewiring your brain. Imagine it as your brain hitting the reset button, getting rid of old patterns and making room for the new. The key here is to understand that it's not just wishful thinking or positive affirmations. It's about creating a mental landscape so vivid and tangible that it starts feeling more real than your current reality. Your brain doesn't distinguish between what's happening in the external world and what's happening in your vivid imagination. Now, let's break it down further. The prefrontal cortex is like a master architect, rearranging the blueprints of your thoughts. It's where your consciousness takes charge, separating you from the automatic responses programmed in the rest of your brain. Think of it as the control center where your dreams take shape and your reality gets a makeover. Imagine you're a sculptor and your brain is the clay. The more you immerse yourself in your vision, the more your prefrontal cortex sculpts and molds the pathways of your brain. These pathways, also known as neural circuits, start aligning with your vision. It's like creating a mental map that guides you towards the future you desire. The beauty of this process lies in its simplicity. You're not required to perform complex rituals or engage in mystical practices. All it takes is your focused attention, a vivid imagination, and the willingness to let go of the old thought patterns that no longer serve you. As you consistently engage in these mental rehearsals, you'll notice something extraordinary happening. Those moments where you lose track of time and space aren't just random occurrences. They are your tickets to the quantum field. It's during these moments that you're not bound by the limitations of your physical body or the constraints of time. So you have the power to shape your future by changing your thoughts. Embrace your vision, feel it with elevated emotions, and watch as your brain and body align with the future you desire. It's not about living in the past, it's about living in the future, and you can achieve anything you set your mind to. Now, you're giving your body that energetic boost. Now, everybody's done this. The moment you've said that, no one can talk you out of it. No person, no thing, no experience. You're possessed by it. So then what happens next? You start writing down all the choices you need to make, all the things you got to do, all the goals and experiences you want in your future. And every time you write one of those goals or experiences down, you start to feel more of those emotions. And now you're basically assembling more of your future. Now, the astute person does something really amazing. They start learning more information. You want to be wealthy? Study wealthy people. You want to be healthy? Study healthy people. As you begin to gain more knowledge, you're adding more stitches into the three-dimensional tapestry, and you got more raw materials to dream in new ways. Now, here's the part that is the most important. Take out a piece of paper and say, what thoughts do I have to stop thinking? I can't. I'll start tomorrow. I'm too hard. I don't feel like it. I have a headache. I gotta go to sleep. I'm tired. List those thoughts and become so conscious of those thoughts that you would never let one of those thoughts slip by your awareness, unchecked by you. Can I say something about that? I want to jump in on that. One of the powers of writing those thoughts down is you completely eliminate and weaken their influence over you. They become minimized when you write them. They lose their power over you when you grab control of them by writing them down. It's a significantly powerful exercise is to write down those thoughts. From a neuroscientific standpoint, what's called metacognition, because the moment you can observe the thought and become conscious of it, you're no longer the program. Your consciousness observing the program, and you begin to literally objectify your subjective self. And now you're pulling out. So then write down the choices you have to stop making. Look at the things you have to stop doing. Are you complaining? Do you make excuses? Do you blame other people? What do you do? List those things and be really honest with yourself. What experiences do you have to stay away from certain people at certain times of the day? Stay away from them so that you are not in the environment that triggers it. And now here's the most important point. Write down those emotions that keep you anchored to the past, because those emotions are literally residue from the past chemically. So then the moment you start feeling suffering, the moment you start feeling guilt, the moment you start feeling unworthy, the moment you start feeling despair, the moment you start feeling any of those emotions, you're back in your past and you can't see the future. You're thinking within those emotional states. And we've looked at enough brain scans to say that when you think within a certain emotion, you're going to make your brain worse. This research on memory says that 50% of what you talk about in the past isn't even the truth, that you don't have the same brain then. So you make stuff up, which means now you're reliving a past that you didn't even have just to embellish it, to produce the emotions, to reaffirm your limited state. Well, the best way to predict your future is to create it, not from the known, but from the unknown. And that void, that unknown, is the perfect place to create from. Now, why is this dangerous? Because when you're living in survival 70% of the time, there's better chances in survival from running from the unknown than embracing the unknown, right? If there's a predator out there, you hear something around the corner and you can't see it, that's an unknown. You're gonna run. You're not gonna go, and it's not a time to trust. It's not a time to open your heart. It's not a time to communicate, here, kitty, kitty. It's not a time to do that. It's a time to run. You'll never trust the unknown in that state. So if people are living by these emotional states of survival, they're never going to want to step out into the unknown because they can't predict the future. So they'd rather hold on to what they have. Turns out that those emotions of stress are highly addictive. They give us a rush of adrenaline, rush of energy. And so people use the problems and conditions in their lives to reaffirm their addiction to that emotion so they can remember who they are as a somebody. So then if your thoughts can turn on the stress response and the stress chemicals are addictive, then we become addicted to our own thoughts. So then stepping out into that unknown is where true greatness happens, because that's where the person begins to say, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? What behaviors will I want to demonstrate in my new life? Can I rehearse them in my mind? And the mere process of mental rehearsal, this is neuroscience now, begins to install the circuits in your brain to look like the experience has already occurred. You're priming your brain into the map of the future instead of the record of the past. And then the true person who's in the process of transformation will say, can I teach my body emotionally what that future is going to be like? Can I begin to embrace the joy of my new life? And their body, as their unconscious mind, begins to believe it's in the future instead of in the past. Now, that process is not an overnight process. We don't jump from the old self to the new self. It requires that continuous process of changing our biology. But I can tell you, in observing people who have healed themselves of very serious health conditions, who've healed themselves of some pretty difficult scars from the past, who've overcome addictions, who've created new opportunities and new jobs and new relationships and a new life, had to cross that river. And that is when they're literally, from a biological standpoint, a new personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So the present personality who's sitting here today has created the present personal reality called their life. Which means then, if you want to create a new personal reality, you got to change your personality. And that means you got to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. Look at your unconscious habits and behaviors, what you say, what you do, and become conscious of it, and change them. And look at the emotions that have kept you anchored to the past and decide if those emotions belong in your future. I think the biggest problem is that most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. So then, as we begin to demystify this, the person starts to say, oh my God, the disease that I have is because it's connected to this personality. Is it possible that if I change my personality, just like a person with a multiple personality disorder who has an allergy to nylon stockings in one personality and type 1 diabetes in another, is it possible then if I change my personality that the disease exists in the old personality and I'm literally someone else? Is it possible then from a biological standpoint that they're healed and changed? So to answer the question, it's difficult because we're breaking out of a biological mold. It's difficult because most people don't know that they have within their reach all the tools to do it because they have, number 3, been conditioned on some level to believe that the new hairstyle or the new type of beer they're going to drink or the sports car or whatever it is going to change their state. And that's the hypnosis. And when I wrote The Placebo, You Are the Placebo, the biggest thing that I walked away with after writing that book was how hypnotized and programmed we really are. And that's bothered me ever since I wrote the book, because people watch things in their external environment and they accept, believe, and surrender to that information without any analysis, and they're programmed. And so when you and I start waking up and say no to those programs, and we start to think that we're maybe a little bit more unlimited than we're given credit for, and it's not driven for profits or self-interest, but when people start to wake up and say, hey, you know, I healed myself of this condition, I healed myself of Parkinson's, I healed myself of lupus, I healed myself of cancer, I healed myself of rheumatoid arthritis, I've healed myself of chronic pain, I healed myself of food allergies. Hey, yeah, I was abused as a child. Yeah, that's right, I was beat up by a violent father, and I lived in vulnerability and fear for the last 25 years. But that fear has signaled the wrong gene, and I developed this genetic condition. It's not enough to just have a clear intention, because clear intentions have very little effect on the nature of reality. Most people don't know that they're moving in and out of the quantum field 7.8 times per second, that you're vibrating in and out of the field all the time, and every time you leave, you disappear, and when you come back, you disappear into that field of information, and you come back with information. But if you go out as the same person, you don't bring any new information back. Are you with me? If you look at quantum physics, the physics of possibility, it's really talking about the spiritual aspect of ourselves, because you couldn't explain a miracle, you couldn't explain a biological process, you couldn't explain a simple healing of a cut at this point without understanding the quantum model of reality, and that there are particles, which are matter, it's you and I and everything in this physical world, And then there's energy, and that energy has a consciousness, it has an awareness, and that energy is a field of information that we are an extension of, that we have access to, and that we spend so much of our life looking outside of ourselves instead of looking inside of ourselves, and that we are really conditioned to look just for particles and matter instead of energy and information. And truly, when people reach the end of their beliefs or they're facing crisis in their life, that's the moment they start to turn within and start to ask the bigger questions. And if you were astute enough to look at this in moments of contemplation, if you were wanting to hide God anywhere, it would be a good place to hide. It would be within the human being, because everybody's looking outside of themselves, and we look for reasons to change and regulate our emotional states. You know, we think that things and people and external things will really fulfill emotions that we're trying to change within us, and that truly when we start to really investigate who we are and look to see how we do that and demystify it, I think once we start to demystify it, it can become a skill. And so Einstein was a super cool guy because he spent a lot of time inward, and at 12 years old, he asked himself this simple question: if I ride my bicycle at the speed of light and I turn my lamp on, I turn my headlight on, will it go on? So he thought about that question every single day of his life. Every day of his life, he would go out in a boat on a lake as a child and lay on his back in the boat and look up at the sky and think about this. And he was building models of understanding. He was working his best to be able to figure out how light and energy were related. He did it for 10 years. He was possessed by the concept. And finally, he was working as a third-rate clerk in a Swiss patent office, and he was watching this man fix the roof across the way. And he just paused for a moment, and he was watching him, and the moment he was watching him, he got this incredible vision, and he understood how light and energy were related. It was a very abstract vision, and it was so abstract and so dimensional that he had to go back to school to learn the mathematics to be able to explain what he saw. And so it became very interesting, because when Einstein published his papers on relativity, he didn't say like, hey, this person said this and this person said this, and I'm going to footnote this person. He just said, ladies and gentlemen, this is how it is. And it rocked the scientific community, because he didn't really need anybody else as a reference. He had a discovery. And his discovery was so unique, and his brain really was wired for the understanding of light, and light was the ceiling of this reality. And so Einstein and Planck started doing these really interesting experiments where they were taking energy and they were putting energetic impulses into metals. And what they were looking to see is if electrons behave the same way as the very large. In other words, when an apple falls from the tree, it falls in a very specific way. It falls towards the center. It falls towards the larger body. So he reasoned, well, if we disturb electrons, and him and Planck were doing these experiments, if we disturb these electrons, then they should fall just like an apple falling from the tree towards the nucleus. It should be predictable, just like it's predictable in Newtonian physics and classical physics. Well, when they started disturbing the electrons, something very unusual happened. The electron gained energy, then it lost energy, and it gained energy, and it lost energy. And it gained energy, and it lost energy. And instead of it falling like a ball rolling down a hill, it was like a ball rolling down steps. All of a sudden, they became very aware that the subatomic world, the very tiny, didn't behave like the very large world. And so then they started to look for the electron. They started to try to measure it, and everywhere they looked for it, it appeared. And when they turned their back on it, and they no longer looked to measure it, it went from a particle that collapsed, called collapsing the wave function, back into energy. Now, this was a revolutionary moment, because this meant that subjective mind, your mind has an effect on the objective world. That mind and matter are somehow correlated. And so this birth of quantum physics came along. And this quantum physics experiments say that you cannot do a quantum physics experiment without an observer around. In other words, a mind always has to be present because it will influence the outcome. You with me? So now that invisible field of spirit, that invisible field of information and energy, somehow you as an individual can influence the nature of reality with your mind. So now Einstein had a lot of trouble with this because he said God doesn't play dice and it doesn't work like this, but his brain was wired for light. And so he had the abstraction and he was getting the download of information, understanding the field of light. And the quantum physicists were saying, well, actually, there's a field of information beyond space and time, beyond light, where everything is unified. You can take two photons that have been somehow related in a specific atom and shoot them to the opposite ends of the universe. And the moment you affect one photon at the exact same time, the other one is affected. So they were being connected or affected in a realm faster than the speed of light. In other words, it would take time if you affected one for the other one to be affected. But if they were beginning to be affected at the exact same time, they were connected in a realm beyond physical reality. Are you with me? And so when the movie What the Bleep came out, and we basically made an effort to show that your mind has an effect on reality, and that in order for you to begin to change your reality, you got to change your mind and change the way you live your life. And we wanted people to become inspired by the process of creation, really give it a shot. And that independent of your gender, of your race, of the color of your skin, of your intellectual ability, independent of your past, independent of your age, that on some level we are all divine creators. And that these models of reality that have separated individuals have all been built on human beings living in a very limited state of mind. And so when quantum physics was born and the whole concept of reality began to unfold, people started to really challenge the nature of reality and that concept that you are somehow connected because you are made of photons and atoms and electrons, that on some level you are an organization, a community of 70 trillion to 120 trillion cells, and all of those cells are made up of atoms and molecules and chemicals. And all of those are working in a coherent form to express yourself as a physical body. Some of the research shows that, 90% of the thoughts that we think on a daily basis are the same thoughts as the day before. So if you think that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, and 90% of your thoughts are the same known thoughts that you're always thinking, then your life should stay the same. Because the same thoughts lead to the same choices. The same choices lead to the same behaviors. Same behaviors create the same experiences. The same experiences produce the same emotions. Those same emotions tend to influence the way we think. And our biology, our neurocircuitry, our neurochemistry, our hormones, and even our gene expression is equal to how we think, how we act, and how we feel. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. So then it makes sense then. If you want to create a new personal reality, a new life, you're going to have to change your personality. And you've got to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. You've got to become aware of your unconscious habits and behaviors, even how you speak. Then you have to look at the emotions that you live by every single day and decide, do these emotions belong in my future? So many people try to create a new life as the same person. In order to create a new personal reality, you've got to change your personality. So the principle in neuroscience says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. Thinking the same way, making the same choices, demonstrating the same actions, creating the same experiences that stamp the same networks of neurons into the same patterns, all for the familiar feeling called you. And you do that for 10 years in a row. You're going to hardwire your brain into a very finite signature because you're firing and wiring that way. And that box in the brain, that becomes our personality, becomes our identity. And by the time we're 35 years old, for the most part, we've done something so many times that the body now knows how to do it as well as the mind. And that's a habit. So we have these unconscious programs of behaviors, automatic habits, redundant emotional reactions, hardwired beliefs, perceptions, attitudes that function just like a computer program. You press go and it runs automatically. So then when it comes time to change, thinking positively is going to do nothing because your body has been conditioned for the most part into a program in the past. So the thought never makes it to the body because the body's on a different program. So how do we begin to influence the body so that the thought actually produces some type of change? So think about it. If you think an unhappy thought, you're going to feel unhappy. If you think you're a failure, you're going to feel like a failure. Once you feel like a failure, you're going to think you're a failure. And people get caught in these loops of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking. And that redundancy is a conditioning process because all you need is an image or a picture or a thought and a feeling, a response, stimulus response. And so the people tend to condition their brain and body into the past. And so when it comes time to change, you got to leave that familiar territory. And any choice that you make, if you said, hey, I'm going to eat a better diet, I'm going to wake up early and work out, I'm going to do meditation, the moment you decide to do something differently, get ready because it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty. You're not going to be able to predict the next moment. That means you've left your known biology and you're stepping into the unknown. Now, theoretically, that sounds great, but if the body has been conditioned into a familiar feeling, it's in the known. The moment you take it outside the familiarity, it wants to go back to where it's comfortable. So the body starts influencing the mind. And this is where people say, I want you to start your diet tomorrow. Oh, why don't you start working out this evening? You're really never going to change. You're too tired. You have a headache. This doesn't feel right. And this is where people talk themselves out of it. Because if they respond to that thought leads to the same choice, which leads to the same behavior, creates the same experience, produces the same feeling. And then they say, this feels right? No, that feels familiar. So going from one state of mind and body to another state of mind and body, you got to cross a river. And the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. Now, once people understand that they're going to be uncomfortable, then the question is, what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors will you demonstrate in one day? And the act of closing your eyes and rehearsing who you're going to be when you open your eyes begins to install neurological hardware in your brain to look like you've already done it. Now the brain, which is typically a record of the past, now becomes a map to the future. And if you keep doing it, the hardware begins to become a software program. And you start behaving differently. And then if you can teach your body emotionally what the future will feel like, that means then you're not going to wait for your wealth to feel abundant or your success to feel empowered or your new relationship to feel love. In fact, the moment you start feeling abundant, you're generating wealth.